And welcome back to the Now Morning Show. Of course, it's Wednesday, which means it's time for Just Kidz Emergency. Joining us in studio is Dr. Jenna Maharaj, and today we're going to be talking about child car safety. Good morning, Dr. Jenna. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me this morning.
It's a pleasure to have you with us this morning on the show, and looking forward to this conversation because many times this is something that we take for granted.
Yes.
Even just doing some research into it, I was like, wow, you know, these are things that we automatically just assume, all right, this is what needs to be done.
Yeah.
But also we're going to be focusing on legislation today, which is so important.
Yes.
So let's get into the conversation immediately and talk about how many children do you see, or would you say you see a lot of children who are victims of road traffic accidents?
So, as an emergency physician, I do see, yes, so we do see kids who are victims of road traffic accidents, which do include motor vehicle accidents in particular. So we do have the extremes. So luckily, fortunately, most of the kids that we see, they do have, I would say, negligible or very minor injuries, which is great. But then unfortunately, we do have the extreme end where we do have kids who are victims to motor vehicle accidents resulting in fatality. And, you know, this might sound a little bit alarming and a little bit heavy this morning, but looking at the statistics across the world, not just in Trinidad or the Caribbean, between the age group of 5 to 15 years old, the number one cause of death in kids is secondary to road fatality, unfortunately. So it is something that we do, you know, we want to talk about this morning to touch on, just to remind our parents and our guardians of safety tips and ways in which we can, you know, just make sure our little one gets safely from point A to point B.
And that's something that's so important because, again, we just park the car and we go. We're on the go every single day. So let's talk about what we can do to ensure that our little ones are safe.
So, first of all, once you go behind that wheel and you are the driver, you need to adopt things that you would normally do to just be a safe driver, right? So that goes without saying. The second thing you want to do, just broad things, is like, let's talk about, which we'll talk about, seatbelt use and child seat use. The other thing I want to say is that the laps, nice and comfy, they are not seats for kids, right? Children are never front seat passengers. So once you're definitely less than 5 years of age, you are not a front seat passenger. So you are in the back. Sometimes we drive down the road and we'll see these kids who they're holding on to both front passenger seats and they're in the middle there kind of looking out at the view. That's a big no-no. So let's avoid things like that.
And what about using the seat belts in the back seat? So this is something we spoke about briefly before we came on in.
Yeah. So somehow as Trinis.
As Trinis.
Right? As Trinis.
Yes.
We seem to think once we're in the back seat, we are safe.
Yes.
Yes. As kids, little ones, yes, we are safer in the back seat. But that does not mean that, you know, the seat belts are in the back for a reason. Right? And we will go on a little bit more about the back seat and what's more appropriate for little ones.
Right. So let's talk about that immediately, talking about what's more appropriate with little ones and car seats for children. There are so many things that actually need to be taken into consideration when we're shopping for one, what the age is as well, because we see sometimes, as you mentioned, you'll see even toddlers not in a car seat. So what age do you recommend?
So from the time you are born, you are to go into a car seat.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So from birth. From birth, you are to be placed in a rear-facing seat. And now, our law says from birth to 6 months, rear facing. Rear facing means you look at the back of the car. From what our legislation says is from 6 months to about 4 years, you are allowed to be in a rear facing seat or a forward facing child seat. So these seats have to be properly adjusted and strapped in with a well-fitted harness to your child. And then from 4 years to 5 years, what the law says is that you are to be in a child seat still or a booster seat that's more appropriate for your child.
Right, interesting. Now, car seats, booster seats, what do we need to look for when we're shopping for a child car seat?
When you're ready to have a baby, right? You're looking for an infant seat. An infant seat, now they vary based on weight. So an infant seat will generally tell you can go up to about 20 kilograms.
Okay.
Right? So safely, the safest thing to do It's to keep your child into that seat until around 10 kilograms,
Okay.
which takes us to around 1 year of age. So by rule of thumb, you stay there till around 1 year. You can even go till 18 months, right? And that is the safest way to do it. From the time around that age, you can transition to a forward-facing child seat.
Okay.
So a child seat gives you, in terms of the weight, gives you a little bit more allowance. But you can use till around, let's say, 18 months, average till around 4 years old, or even 5 years old. It really depends on the weight of your child as well, right?
Okay.
So again, the child has to be strapped in properly. Let's go. So from beyond that age till, again, it really depends on the weight of your child.
Right.
Let's say from 5 till around 10 years old, it's a booster seat.
Okay, and can we reuse car seats as well? Because this is something we see a lot, of course. I mean, you're a parent, you have multiple children.
Yeah.
Can you reuse it, or do we need to invest every time we have a new baby?
That's a real good question, because this is something I only realized after I had my second child. Because I was like, oh, I have a car seat at home, I could just use that. But car seats, like everything else in the car, especially your tires, they do have an expiry date. So I'm telling you, I did not know this only until I had the experience myself.
Yeah.
So generally, they will tell you there's a nice little sticker on the back of the car seat. It doesn't go throw away like the instructions. It's on there.
Yes.
It kind of tells you the date of manufacture and valid till or do not use beyond. We're saying 5 to 10 years max.
5 to 10 years.
Yes.
Okay, so we can reuse. Now let's go back to you. We were speaking about the different ages and when you can have a child in the back with a rear-facing seat versus who can sit in front. What about legislation? Are there penalties in legislation if we don't follow these rules?
Yeah. So you can be charged. So if you're driving around Trinidad and Tobago with a child who is 5 or less in your front seat, you should and you can be charged.
All right. So it's okay from a safety perspective, though. It's safe to put a child in the front seat at 6 years old, or would you say still keep them in the
So
back?
while the legislation does not expand beyond, I would say no.
Okay.
Yeah, for multiple reasons. A child at 6 years old, in terms of size, height, weight, is no way that you are not physically safe. God forbid you have a really serious collision.
Right.
There are lots of things your child can go through the windshield. Apart from that, airbags being deployed can really impact and damage a child that little. And second of all, when we look at the seat belts that are installed, they don't fit appropriately for a child that age. So the diagonal strap in particular, the way it's supposed to rest on the shoulder, when you look at children, it might rest on their neck, it might rest on their face, on their head, and that's not appropriate fitting at all. So I would say back seat.
Do you have any recommendations to keep your children occupied while they're in the back seat? Because as you mentioned, they come in between the two seats, and you're just trying to drive, and they're just there talking to you, and you're like, sit back.
Strap them in. Strap them in. In your
harness.
child seats and a harness and properly strap them in.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents do tell you, oh, they cry in the car seats and they fuss and they this. I tell them yes, but I would so much prefer a safe child at our destination. Any day.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, just before we wrap, let's go back to the legislation for a moment, because one of the things is, yes, we have recommendations in law, but speaking to you as an experienced physician, you have suggested that we can look above and beyond that. Do you think that perhaps we need some amendments?
I think so. I think we should look a little bit more and update the legislation and elaborate a little bit more. That being said, I mean beyond 5 years of age. So, for example, in the UK, they say very clearly, once you are 12 years and under or less than 135 centimeters, you are in the back seat, in a child seat.
Okay.
So that's just one example.
Well, thank you so much for that, and definitely something we're going to take into consideration, and hoping that you don't experience too many children coming in.
I really hope so too.
Thank you for being with us, Dr. Jenna.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Dr. Jenna Maharaj, consultant in emergency medicine from Just Kidz Emergency. They're located at number 10 Broome Street in St. Clair. Make sure that you check them out, and make sure that you stay tuned because the Now Morning Show has more coming up right after this.